Here we go.
We are
All
live.
right.
Welcome back. Welcome
You
to
are live.
We have a very special
I'm
guest
dead.
today. We have Amanda Parker, who is the managing director of Cowgirl Creamery.
Hi.
Last week we spoke with. Whoop! There she is.
Hi.
Last week we spoke with Sue Connolly, the co-founder of Cowgirl Creamery. So we're happy to have you here to get another perspective about what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So my face is covered.
So you look better that way. You look better with a sign across your face.
Actually, I can get it.
So I wanted to get a little perspective. We talked to Stu last week about the cheesemakers themselves and the impact that all of this is having on them, which is catastrophic in some cases, and many of them are managing. But how about the retail and the wholesale distribution side? What obviously better, but still, is it enough?
Well, I think that's the question. I think it depends certainly on the cheesemaker. Many small scale cheesemakers, especially if they're starting out, certainly this was true of us at Cowgirl in the beginning, really rely heavily on local restaurants, especially in a place like the Bay Area where such great chefs are such great advocates for small producers and local producers. So shuttered or at very reduced capacity, I think in many cases is taking a real impact on those makers. We have been very fortunate here at Cowgirl, at least, to see that both on the restaurant side and the distribution side, even though we're nowhere near at the level we were at in the beginning, or certainly the amount of sales and business and movement, we've been really pleased to see a lot of our partners being able to pivot really quickly into delivery and pickup and curbside pickup and restaurants turning into pantries, and it's been great at least, but it's not doing enough necessarily in comparison to normal business, sadly.
Are any of the cheesemakers changing what they make to respond to this?
Yeah, I mean, here in the Bay Area, I can't think of any really good examples off the top of my head, but I'll certainly say that in the broader American cheese industry, I've seen a couple of people that are moving really quickly to make very easy to make cheeses, very little process involved, but just really kind of inexpensive, good quality, good milk cheeses, in many cases to sell to, for example, or donate to food banks or pantries that need good cheese. There's a couple folks in the Midwest and in the South I can think of that are doing something like this. Mm-hmm. Also, that if you're a farmstead cheesemaker, the alternative would be to dump your milk, which is catastrophic, of course. It's such a waste.
So Amanda, let's say we're looking, we're always talking about, how damaging all this stuff has been and on and on. But if we look at the time of the year, what would be the loss in time? What would be like 4 months, 6 months? Is it a half a year gone? How do you, this is where we need to start thinking about the timing, because for restaurants, for example, in the old days before that, if we lost one weekend, it would be a big trouble. We lost 2 weekends, it would be a whole catastrophe. So now we're losing 4 months. So, and people are still, so how do you get back from that? When do we start again? Because now you're trying to survive, but what about if you have to stay 2 more months? What's going to happen then?
I think that's the big question, and I wish I had a good answer for it. I would be a cheese economist in that case if I could. But I think many people are thinking even further out than that, and I think many folks are thinking about the fourth quarter. I think the holidays are going to be the biggest question about whether you can really survive. So many of us make so much of our revenue and are able to really spike in gifts and holiday celebrations. Specialty cheese is not an everyday item for everybody. So if you can get through to the holidays and we don't see any real horrible diminishment to that, maybe we're back up to normal consumption by then, maybe not even close, but enough. I think that'll help people through. But again, that's a big question mark. And certainly with safety measures in place, we're starting to see reopening, which is great, as we all applaud those measures. But even capacity in a restaurant isn't enough to keep that going, unfortunately.
Are retail sales staying up? I mean, I would think this would be a great time to buy cheese because people are kind of sick of cooking dinner every night. So cheese is an easy food.
It's been a really interesting thing to watch. So, one of the interesting things about our business is that we are very multifaceted for a relatively, small sized organization. We saw a tremendous dip immediately in all of our food service accounts. So anybody that we directly distribute to, or the restaurants that buy our cheeses, and those that we distribute through our distribution arm, Smallest Bay Foods. So we saw food service, dramatically dipped. All of a sudden in that first couple of weeks, retail sales went crazy as everybody was bunker buying, as they say. Now,
right.
Healthy cheese is not quite the same thing as bread flour and canned tomatoes, but we saw a big spike in our retail sales then. E-commerce for us was the thing that actually spiked really, really substantially.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So we were lucky, Peg and Sue built this business with lots of different arms that sometimes is very complex, and at this point helped us kind of even out. But all of that seems to be kind of stabilizing again at this point. So hopefully we'll see it come back.
So we're trying to make a bunch of recipes. We're trying to think of cool recipes to make fun stuff, to use the cheese all the time, because cheese is cool because it's easy. You go in your fridge, and I was going to show you something to you today, something I make a lot here. You mix your cheese with herbs and olive oil and garlic and whatever, and that's your meal. I mean, really, it's super fast. And it's very, very good. It's super healthy. It's awesome food. So,
also, as we're going into summer, a lot of people think that cheese is such a cold weather food, or they don't think of cooking with cheese in the summer, which, maybe you're not doing big casseroles and stuff, but cheeses are great in all kinds of salads and desserts and all kinds of stuff. So we're going to try to think up some stuff over the next few weeks to talk about on the show.
I'd love to be able to. So today, I mean, I know you know that, but good food is going to be primer. People are really looking for real food, and cheese is real food. It's artisanal. So when you include that in recipes, my goal, I do a kids class and a bunch of stuff like this, and I want people to understand that it's actually super healthy. So your meal becomes healthier.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds weird, but like, for example, and I'm not a big macaroni and cheese. I don't like the pasta. But for example, take macaroni and cheese. There you have a complete meal, that complete protein. It's stupid stuff like this. The cheese is a complete protein, and a lot of people are looking for that. That's one aspect of it. Simple. Put some spinach, mushroom.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's comfort food. I like to see people move beyond eating mac and cheese and pizza every day, which sometimes working at Cesar across the street from the cheese board, I think sometimes that Berkeley parents feed their kids nothing but pizza and sushi.
I know.
Well, when you're a cheese board, how can you get anything but pizza? I'm a Berkeley myself, so I can appreciate that.
Right.
No. The reason
the cheese board is opening up again tomorrow.
Which one?
Fantastic.
It's not for retail. I think it's strictly online ordering. You have to order at least the day before, which seems odd to me to order a slice of pizza the day before, but I don't know if they're selling slices or whole pies.
Okay, by the way, James, the reason why I talk about macaroni and cheese, this is not my favorite food at all. I don't eat that. No. I'm just saying, in the realm of what people know and they are comfortable and used to, this is where you can play a lot. When I make macaroni and cheese for the kids at the classes here, I had mushroom, tomato, spinach, very different cheeses. I'm going to do blue cheese, good. I mean, a lot of cheeses. It's fun. And that becomes then I don't mind the pasta. Less pasta, more of the stuff in there. Anyway.
Well, I love our fresh cheeses in particular in the summertime, right? So to your point, you're not looking for a big cozy casserole right now, but it's the season for, I, like many people, have gotten into sourdough baking during the,
right.
So I've got lots of kind of varying degrees of successful breads in my freezer mostly.
That's great. That's great.
I love that, just a little bit of toast. And then Cowgirl makes a really, really lovely fromage blanc, which not many people are familiar with, but that on some toast and whatever veggies I happen to get, safely social distance at the market, we'll drizzle of olive oil, some herbs. It's like the perfect light spring lunch. So.
Yeah.
Hey, Guzlab, good. No, I don't remember. How are you?
I remember. I remember the
James,
Good Bob.
James remembers.
Let me ask you another cheesemaker question that you may or may not know the answer to. I'm curious, the cheesemakers that really their bread and butter is in aged cheeses that are 6-8 months aged. Do you think they're better off right now because they can afford to wait? I mean, obviously they need to turn product that they have ready now.
Yeah. I think it's kind of 6 to 1, half dozen to the other, depending on how you think about it. If you're somebody who is accustomed to making aged cheeses and you had some in stock and inventory and you're able to predict ahead, then you're probably okay with somewhat of a rolling, balance of product going in and out. But aged cheeses are frankly just, money in the bank in many ways. So if you're somebody that needs, quicker flow and you really are relying on like farmers market sales or local chef sales and you're a soft ripened product, it can be really tricky, I think. And I'm not sure anybody would say they're better off at this point. I think everyone's struggling a little bit, but certainly it calls for just what does it mean to have to predict 6-8 months out, and how will the retail sector look? How will the market look? How will people be buying things? There's so many questions that it would be difficult, I think, to only be able to rely on your predictive skills in the future.
How are you doing it at your shop in Point Reyes Station? Are you actually selling cheese as well as prepared foods?
Yeah, so I have to say the team out there did an amazing job of just moving really, really quickly to meet what was this kind of new reality. So way back in March, when the shelter in place was issued for Marin County, we essentially were shuttered for a couple of days, and it came back online for curbside pickup and essentially started with phone-only orders, a limited menu of some of our most popular cheeses, as well as some of the amazing prepared foods they do out there. And actually, in a couple of weeks later, we were able to build an online store. So we replicated a lot of our on-hand products. And now you can go to it's a Square website, essentially, that allows for pickup, and that has worked really well. It means, when you walk up to the door, it's actually, this past week, they reopened sort of to walk-up service, still at a distance, of course, but now you can call in, you can order online, and you can also come to the doors, but all with distance. And we're hoping to open the doors back up somewhat soon.
Yeah, right.
A very, very small number of people allowed in at any given time, and obviously kept apart. But as the weather gets nicer and the parks reopen, which I think was today, in fact, we're expecting to see a lot more visitors out to Point Reyes.
Are people actually buying cheeses too?
Oh yeah, people are buying cheese and lots of wine and beer, as you can imagine.
Yes.
But to your point, I mean, mac and cheese was very popular in the beginning because it was still cold out, and kind of, I think we were all trying to feed our hunger and soul a little bit. But now we've got more kind of spring salads and sandwiches and whatnot. But yeah, lots of pieces of cheese too.
Well, it's certainly a favorite thing of ours to do when we go out to the shore, is to stop at the shop and load up for a picnic and then head out there.
Yeah.
I think, talking about some of that comfort food, like we said, macaroni and cheese. I mean, everybody has their own version of what comfort food is. And I think people really revert to that in a time of crisis because it just makes you feel better.
Exactly.
And anything you can do to kind of, get a sense of normalcy is, and then you get more creative after that. Once you get used to the crisis, I think then you start to branch out.
What cheese is very special. It triggers a lot of hormones in the brain that makes you happy also. Not just dopamine, there's a general senses. And cheese specifically does that. And I think it has to do with fermentation.
Well, it certainly is something people love to talk about. I find that whenever I tell somebody about my job, they have a visceral reaction one way or the other. There's people who don't love cheese at all, and then they tell you about it. But mostly people are just so enthusiastic about it in general. So it's nice to be able to share that.
It's an old food. It's an old food, like nuts and bread. It's very old. This is something that's very primal. We have that. It's in our mind. Yeah. It's in our genes, man.
Well, it's funny. I usually teach classes, cheese classes, mostly at the Cheese School of San Francisco. And
oh yeah, that's a good school. Yeah,
which is wonderful. And I always love to tell the stories at the beginning, these kind of cheese origin myths that we talk about in the industry. And one of the kind of jokes I tell in every class is, when you think about it, cheese is really this primordial kind of way of essentially avoiding spoilage, right? It's essentially controlled spoilage.
Right.
It's not really very sexy or appealing. So somebody wiser than I essentially made it more poetic by saying that cheese is milk's leap towards immortality.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Clifton Fat.
Very nice.
There you go. That's who it is. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the cheese is that's interesting because I would like to know which one came first, the feta type cheese or the naturally fermented, because the feta makes sense because we were using salt for a long time already. So the salt would be kind of a normal thing. But how did they come out with the other one, the natural,
I mean, there's a great book. I might have it behind me. You'll see. But there's a really great book by a fellow named Paul Kinstead, who does a lot of really fantastic work on cheesemaking in general. He's out of Vermont. And he wrote a book called Cheese and Culture, which if you really want to go down the nerdy cheesemaking path, it essentially traces many pieces of humanity through civilizations.
Yeah.
And my understanding, is that it's essentially the natural fermentation inside, these rucksacks that were generally the stomachs, frankly, probably happened before the feta because it was, feta would have then come about from taking those naturally, spontaneously fermenting bits and essentially trying to keep them even longer, which would be brining. And after they moved from the Fertile Crescent up into the Mediterranean on the northern side from Bulgaria and Greece. And either way, it's pretty magical to think somebody
totally.
It is pretty magical, and I can totally understand how the first sort of cheese that was consumed was basically just fresh curds, basically, that they discovered, and then you're out in the desert somewhere, you're tending your sheep or your goats, you're not gonna throw it away because it went bad. You're gonna try it if you can. Hey, this is pretty good. I think what's interesting is how they figured out you could age cheeses. Of course, it took hundreds of years to figure that out. But the idea that you take a product that's very fresh in the beginning, and then somehow
you can't forget, James, that the old days there was already alchemists that were working on finding gold, and they were making experiments all the time with all kind of things. And it's very possible. I know that people have all kind of argumentation of how it started. Nobody knows that, that's for sure. But there's a lot of possibility. But one possibility is in the kitchen, most of my best dishes are from mistakes. So it's very possible that something was kind of lemon, some milk. Oh, wow, what's that thing going on? And then let it sit, forget it. There's a lot of experimentation in kitchen, in alchemy also. So it may very well have started very scientifically. We don't know.
Yeah, people like to look to sort of the first person to discover this. But I think it probably happened over a large area with
many different places, whatever.
Simultaneously, yeah.
I'm just glad they figured it out.
There was a lot, but we were good in plants already, in tea, in concoction. We did elixir, we did potions. It's very possible, and we did wine and beer. So the fermentation was not; it was already known. So
isn't it great that they figured out cheese, wine, and bread all kind of at the same time? I mean, that was.
I know, right?
There's a lot to those people, that's for sure.
And ours too, pretty much. Well, listen, Amanda. You're welcome to stay with us, but I appreciate your time, and I don't want to keep you from your work, but we really, really appreciate you visiting with us today.
And we are. So I was telling Sue last week that it would be good to work on recipes that are very easy to do, kind of very fast use. So I don't like to burn my cheese too much. It's really good flavor, right? But if I want to take into account the nutrition aspect, I want to keep it kind of wholesome as I can. So it'd be great to do recipes where you go from one point to another. You stop here because of nutrition, but then for the pleasure and the fun, you can go further, which is always the goal. You can never take one aspect of things. You have to kind of mix stuff, right? So it'd be interesting to see steps, how can you make that dish You can make it 3 ways: super nutritious, very fun, burnt. Because burnt cheese is fun too. I mean, literally, it's not great, but it's pretty awesome.
Well,
So
and then
anyway,
there's all those ways of using fresh cheeses that you don't cook them at all, like taking
like
feta
what?
and crumbling it up with watermelon and mint is a fabulous salad that's so refreshing. Or
Well, I was
obviously
going
a
to show you something today
fruit
that I was going to
salad.
make anyways.
Okay.
It's something I make a lot. And one thing I've noticed is basically when you open a goat cheese or feta and you don't close it perfectly, it goes bad.
Mm-hmm.
As when you put oil in it, it never goes bad.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do when I have some cheese left over that's going to go bad, I'm going to mix it with a lot of garlic, olive oil, and herbs. And this thing will never go bad. I mean, I don't know never, but I've done experiment because there is so much antioxidant. There is oil that prevents from oxidation. There is all the garlic that is a super strong antibiotic, and all the herb, the thyme, the oregano. So all these guys are antibacterial, antiviral. So this whole population here protect itself, and it's going to be a while before all those things are gone. So that's one way to do that. I do that a lot.
Well, if I made that in my kitchen, I would never know how long it lasted because
Exactly.
over a
I
day or
I
two.
know because I forgot sometime, and I'm like, oh shit.
Oh, really?
Oh no, that's okay. And no mold, nothing. It's crazy. And one thing you can do that's really easy. You can take any pesto, cheese, and mix it together. That's any. So I got a pesto that I got that I made the other day, like really, literally 2 days ago. It's a big, very chunky pesto with a bunch of nuts, mint, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. But let's say I have my cheese that's going to go bad, or I'm not sure. I'm just going to mix it, mash, and now my cheese is going to stay forever. See, so there's really a good way, because a lot of people lose cheese because they don't take care of it, and that's not good. And that sucks. It's like, and then it's expensive.
Yeah, you don't want to waste cheese.
No, there's so much work that goes into it.
Yeah.
It's so precious.
Anytime I ever contemplate throwing something away, I always have this tinge where I think, what did it take to get this product to my table? And now I've wasted it. I'm throwing some. I try to throw it in compost, which then at least there's that. But yeah, I mean anything,
So,
tea, cheese,
right.
coffee. I think way too many people worked on this to get it to
There's
me for me to be cavalier about the use of it.
there's another point I wanted to make, and I wanted to ask you, Amanda. I mean, I don't want to ask you to give me your numbers, but like for example, in the food business, in a restaurant particularly, we have a national average of profit is about 5 to 7%. Okay, that means 95% to 92% of the money we make goes back into the community.
Yeah.
There's no executives. We don't have like fancy, all the money we make, it's completely for the economy. So restaurant business is super crucial because that's what feeds the economy. We don't take the money and cash it and go get crazy stuff. We can't. We don't have that. But this is important to understand for people when we say buy locally. No, buy locally because that money is going to go back that's in your town, in your cycle. We buy cheese and we buy vegetables and we buy fish and we get the wine and we get to pay our busboy and the waiter and the people. This is very important, and we keep what saves 5 to 7% if we can. And cheese must. I mean, all the food is the same, so people need to understand that all the money we make, all the food business, it all coming back to the community. This is very important, so people can just be a little more,
Yeah, I mean, we are our margins depend on the business that we're in, of course, or the business that you're in. But at the end of the day, the number,
it's expensive.
It's very expensive, right?
Right.
And we are an organic cheesemaker in particular. So
right.
Not only are we already starting off with milk that is, many, many, many times more expensive than commodity milk, we're also trying as hard as we can to pay our teams well. We're trying to buy what we can. And at the end of the day, the number one biggest thing that I would give more money back to if I could is our employees.
Exactly. Which themselves will spend around in the same. No, that's the thing. How much do you think the difference between organic and non-organic you would, you lose basically, or what's your cost? Just on that.
I mean, I would probably say, we pay about, depending on where we get our milk from, we pay about $3 to $4 a gallon, and I think commodity pricing is under $1, right?
Oh
So
my God, yeah. So it's four
more
times,
expensive.
3 to 4
Yeah.
times. That's a huge amount.
So when we talk about, the end retail price, you go to a store, and we hear a lot
Oh
of
my God.
conversations about organic versus commodity, or organic versus regular. And the reality is that for all the customers out there who have so much more, faith in the brands that they buy, they really spend their money with, especially in the Bay Area. You really kind of vote with your dollar, as it were. I think
Absolutely, that's
sometimes explaining that that's not just money, that's value, right? That's our local farmers.
ah, exactly. So
That's our
this is
team.
the idea. That's the message. That's the message. That's the message. Distribute your money through us.
Yeah, exactly. And that's to, better land, right? So our 2 dairy farmers are out in Point Reyes, and they're both actively working on some of the really interesting and innovative ways to be regeneratively organic. And that's an amazing practice that has a lot of potential for the environment. You're paying for that, right? You're paying for their families that have been 4 or 5 generation dairy farmers. You're paying to keep that land preserved. You're paying for no hormones. You're paying for all of the things that are
You
under
are
the
investing in your future and your family's future.
Yeah.
That money is not going away. You can see it. It's visual. You can actually see the money
Exactly.
as gone in whatever pockets.
Exactly. So even as we grow, I think it's interesting. Obviously, Sue and Peggy started the company so many years ago now, and I feel very fortunate to be following in their footsteps. Even as we sell more Cowgirl cheese, for example, even across the whole country, at the end of the day, that growth, growth sometimes people think is a dirty word, right? And I think growth is opportunity. I think it means that you can broaden your impact by delivering great products to more people, and therefore the value comes back to the people that provide the materials.
Very nice, huh?
I also think, am I frozen, or are you two frozen?
I'm not frozen.
No.
There we go. I'm back. I don't know.
You
YouTube look frozen to me, so I don't know if it's me that's.
James, you look a little stiff.
Am I back?
You're getting there.
Can you remove that smile?
There are worse things to be worrying about right now.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
I also just think that when you're talking about something that, am I going in and out here?
Yes, that's okay. That's okay.
You guys keep freezing, so I think it's me that's freezing.
It's you, but that's okay. Keep going, because we were not listening before, so it's fine. Just say.
There we go. Well, what I was trying to say was that to me, it's also when you're talking about an animal product, so you're talking about something that the initial ingredient comes out of an animal. To me, it's all the more important that I have assurance that how that's been raised, what that animal eats, the well-being of the animal. Is that animal in a calm peace of mind, or is it totally? And that's very important to me. And I don't know why it's not more important to other people that kind of poo-poo organic products. I mean, it seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
I think there are products that are made that aren't certified organic that are still very good.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think there are products that are not certified organic that I know how they're made, and they're made well.
No, absolutely.
But just having that certification is just a little bit more assurance that what you're getting is really good for you.
Is it?
Absolutely. And it's
we're chopping up here.
Yeah, I know, but it's okay because we can see you. You're on and off, but good. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's just me.
James, the animals being taken care of. When I first joined the company, I got a tour of one of our. We only work with 2 dairy suppliers out in West Marin, and one of them, the family, the Taylor family out for Bivalve Dairy.
Oh yeah.
They actually had Temple Grandin, the acclaimed animal behavioral scientists come and examine their milking parlor to help them design it in a way that would minimize risks for the animals as much as possible.
Yeah.
The pinnacle of how you do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference. I'm convinced it makes a difference.
Well, yeah. You can have cortisol, stress hormone all over your blood and then deliver some good milk. It's impossible.
No.
It
It's
didn't
an
work for
infinitely
humans.
fascinating subject. I've written about cheese for 20 years now, and I never feel like I'm done. I feel like as soon as you write about something, there are changes and there's new developments, and I learn about a new cheesemaker or something. So it's infinitely fascinating.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I fell into it accidentally and got out for a couple of years when I got my grad degree, but got suckered back in.
Wow.
You know, it's like a cult you can't leave.
Well, that's good.
Labor of love. It's a craftsmanship. It's artisanal. It's beautiful. You know, it's like butcher.
Milk chemistry and art and science and
you live in a natural environment. It's very important. You know, like those. It's
very cool.
Yeah, well, we're very spoiled here in the Bay Area too, because you talk about buying local. We're able to buy a lot of world-class local ingredients that are made within a 100-mile radius of here.
Absolutely.
We have a butcher shop now in Berkeley called the Local Butcher. It's a bunch of chefs, and they say that everything in there is from within 150 miles of the shop.
Yeah.
And even the ancillary products, they've got a few crackers and odds and ends in there, and everything. They won't buy anything that's made further than 150 miles away, which is really incredible to do. And I don't know if you could do that in Des Moines,
I can't do that. It's I can't because I need too many things that are whatever. But whatever you can.
All right. Well,
Good.
Amanda, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Amanda, you're welcome to stay. We're gonna talk about feta and a bunch of stuff. So
I'm gonna hop off if that's all right. But I look forward to recipes you come up with.
Amanda. Thank you
for
so much.
having me. Take care.
Well, hopefully you'll join us again one day.
I'd love that. Thank you.
All right.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye, Amanda. All right. So Jimbo.
So we were going to talk about feta because it's such feta is great anytime, but to me it's such a great summertime cheese when it's warm out because there's so many interesting things you can do to it. It's a really, really old cheese. For a fresh cheese, it's very old. Put it that way.
For a very fresh old cheese, yeah. So how did that? What's the difference? That's why I was, what's the difference between before? I mean that's the cheese. Between this one, which is cured, and all the other one that are not cured.
Well, there's a lot of feta made, particularly in this country, that's basically a fresh cheese. It's not put up in brine. It's mostly made from cow's milk, which is not really the norm in Greece.
Yeah, because it has to be sheep, right?
In Greece, you just look at the topography. I mean, cows do not do well there. There's not big, huge, flat green pastures. It's very rocky. The soil is rough. The vegetation is very herbaceous, but not grassy. So goats and sheep can really do well there. They thrive. They can eat all the wildflowers and herbs and stuff, wild grasses, and they can turn it into first-class milk. Cows would not do well there, and they wouldn't do well on the terrain either. So that's why traditionally feta has always been made from either sheep or goat, or often a combination of the two. Yep. They're both really good. Goat's milk feta tends to be much, much whiter, and it has a little more of a tang to it, kind of a winey flavor, and a little more of a fresh flavor. Sheep's milk feta tends to be a little richer. The color is a little darker. It's more of an ivory color because that's the nature of sheep's milk. Some people say it tastes a little bit like lamb, or kind of a lamby thing. I've never quite gotten that, but I think they both have kind of a barnyardy taste to them. And back in 2000,
the flavors in cheeses, a lot of time you find it from what the animal eats.
right, and especially when you're talking about cheeses from Greece that are really, those animals are really out there on the hillside eating the local vegetation. It absolutely translates into the
If
cheese.
there's a lot of rosemary or a lot of sage or a lot of whatever, pine bark, anything that's around that's going to go into your flavor is going to go into the fat. Those are fat soluble
Yeah.
compounds. So they'll go and flavor the fat because fat carries the flavors anyways.
So I like having feta around. I like having it in the fridge because it's
Well, I was
so
going
good.
to show you something cool, actually.
I like to put it in my scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
I already talked about using it in a salad with watermelon and mint is a great summertime. It's a great snack in the summertime, but it's very nutritious. And then, of course, a classic Greek salad is just unbeatable with all kinds of fresh veggies and herbs and olive oil.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Olives.
You know, I like feta when I make a lentil salad that's still a little bit warm. I'm going to throw some feta in there.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So it melts a little bit, but not. It's going to make a creamy dressing. It's pretty cool. But
Yeah,
I was going
sometimes
to
I'll.
No, James, I was
I'll
going to show you. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to show you how to make a little cool feta thing I do with garlic and herbs one after a little
Good.
bit.
Good. I'll open the wine. I'll open the wine while you're doing that.
Yeah. Do you have 2 glasses?
Another simple dish I do that's really, really quick is I'll make a little spaghetti and I'll dress it with olive oil and salt and pepper, and then I'll just crumble feta over it, and it's fabulous. It's, it couldn't be easier. And I don't eat, I'm like you, I don't choose to eat a lot of pasta, but every once in a while spaghetti tastes good to me, and every once in a while I crave it. But I don't eat it very often. But that's a really simple and fast thing to do.
So
what are you going to do? What's your thing?
Well, I was going to show you something very cool that I do a lot here. Actually, I'm going to show you 2 things. Let me get you out of there for a minute.
Yeah, get me out of there.
I have a big block of feta here. And I'm going to use half of it just to show you how to keep the other half in the right way. So I got a fork because I'm going to work with fork. I don't need a knife. I'm just going to cut a bunch here. And I'm going to keep this one. So let's say I don't need that. So I'm going to put that right here. I'm not a big fan of plastic, but there's not much stuff. I can't find my glass. I can't order anything right now. It's all crazy. I'm going to keep that water, of course. Okay. And now what I'm going to do to keep that feta from being bad, I'm going to take some salt, maybe a good teaspoon, and just cover with water. That's it. Boom.
So essentially you're making a brine.
Yes. Now that feta will not go bad. So basically you can buy as much feta as you want. This is how we keep it. Boom. The next thing I want to show you is very cool. It's something I do a lot. Okay. I put a lot of herbs. So whatever herbs you want. I'm going to put some, let's put some oregano because it's really cool. Okay.
Well, oregano is classic with Greek cuisine too. So.
Maybe a little whatever more. Actually, let's stick to oregano. Okay, so I have a bunch of stuff here. And actually, James,
yes.
what feta? This is a sheep feta. I always buy sheep feta. Okay. I'm going to peel that, get those herbs, and I'm going to put a lot of garlic. You see what I'm doing, huh?
Yep.
Okay. Peel, peel, peel. Get those leaves out. To peel. It smells really good. This is awesome.
I'll bet it does. Okay. I can smell it from here.
I know. I did that on purpose. It's my new microphone. It's pretty cool. Okay, you put a bunch of stuff in there, and I'm going to show you a little trick that you can do that's really awesome. And also, you can put parsley, dill, whatever you want. So the thyme is very important. It gives a good flavor. If you don't have fresh herbs, I've done it with herb de Provence. You know, the dried herbs.
Mm-hmm.
That works. It's not as good though. It is really not as good. So I've done with dried. It works really well, but it's not. It's not at all the same because here I have a lot of cool oils. All right. So at this point, that I make a big mess on my table, I'm gonna chop that with a lot of garlic. Oh, there's a big stem here. Lots of garlic. So how much is a lot of garlic for that guy? That's how much. Remove the dirty part. Whatever is not pretty, the root end, whatever doesn't look good to you, you know. And then we're going to mince all this together, okay? Together. And we're just going to go slow. And you're going to keep doing that. And you're going to keep mincing all this together, okay? We're making some amazing stuff right here.
And it's okay that the garlic is raw like that. It's not going to be too
it's better
strong.
raw. It's better
Yeah.
raw. That's how you get so many nutrients. This is a superfood. Oh, I forgot the big one.
Yeah, that's a good problem.
Okay, and when I say superfood, that means that it's super healthy. It's going to deliver a lot of nutrients. So, for example, garlic is a superfood. Onion is a superfood. Ginger is a superfood. Thyme, oregano. Oregano is a superfood. Superfood means has a lot of things to offer. It's one of the healers. Fantastic food. Fantastic food. Heather, it's true. Okay, and what you want to do though,
really cute.
you guys, this is important though. You need to keep going until it's super fine. You know why? Because I really don't want to bite on that big thing of garlic.
Right.
I like garlic, but so you're gonna keep going, and you
Now,
see
would you ever do that in a food processor,
no.
or is it too hot?
You know what? People can do, and I never worry about people using a food processor because I think whatever they want to do, it's fine. If you want to use a food processor, you want to use a little guy like this.
Yeah.
Because it's not too powerful, you won't destroy everything. What I'm trying to get here is I'm trying to break that compound of the garlic, get the allicin going. I can actually talk. Well, we already talked about this many times.
Mm-hmm.
And get those herbs to retain some nutrients for later. What you need to understand is the antioxidants here are going to start going away. But if I don't chop them too much, they'll stay longer in the herbs. But I need to chop them enough so I don't have a big piece of garlic or anything in there. All right, so I'm pretty much done here. I could go further, but I'm going to stop just for the sake of that. And you see what I'm doing? My hand is on the top. My left hand is flat. So when you chop anything, you cannot do this. Don't put that finger in there. No. Let's keep that here so you can see what's going on, okay?
Because that would add a whole new element to the dish, wouldn't it?
That's the bacon part.
Yeah.
All right. Woo. Okay, wait, we're not done. First of all, it smells really good. That's amazing. And what I like a lot, because I always said that feta cheese doesn't have enough fat for me. Boom.
Nice.
Black pepper. Oh my God. And that's it. And all you need to do is this. Look at that. Okay.
Very nice.
Pretty cool, huh?
Right.
And you know what is this is a cheese that we have a lot in France a lot. You know what it's called?
Fromage fort.
No.
No.
Boursin.
Oh, Boursin. Oh, of course, of course.
That's Boursin. Better. Way better. But
Yeah.
that's Boursin. That's it. That's your Boursin right here. Cool, huh?
Very.
And because of the oil and everything, that keeps really well. That won't go bad for a while. So basically, you can make a big guy, and it's very garlicky. And I can tell you, this is really good for the immune system. That garlic is, and those herbs and everything is awesome. Great.
Well, I'm going to be
That's
making that
it.
a lot this summer.
Yeah. Cool, huh?
And I'm going to get some. I'm going to get some Acme walnut levain bread.
Yeah.
Slice it up, toast it just a little bit, just to put a little bit of crunch on it, get a little bit of brown, and then I'm going to spread that on there while the bread is still warm, so it's going to melt a little.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm going to open a bottle of really good wine.
Like a
And
one.
that's it. That's all you need.
I need to try this.
Maybe have a little salad with it, a little green salad.
I need to try this, chef.
I think you should.
So when you have pesto, you can do the same exact thing.
Uh-huh.
You see what I mean? I could, instead of doing that whole thing I did with the herbs, literally take my pesto I did, any pesto, even if you buy one, I don't care. Boom. And that's fast and easy, right?
Right.
Let's see what it tastes like. Should be pretty good. And lots of garlic, which is...
Did you bring enough for everyone?
Yeah. It's right here. Mm.
Oh my God. I'm coming over. That's
Wow.
all there is. I'm coming over.
James, you're 5 minutes away.
Yeah, I'll put on my mask and my hazmat suit and I'll come over and have some of that with you. Or I could just make some myself, which I think I will. Very nice.
Yeah. All right. So,
Fetta's a great summertime cheese. So is fresh goat's milk. By the way, you could do that same dish with goat cheese, with a fresh goat cheese. It would have a completely different flavor, but that's okay.
you know what I've done? Actually, that's a good idea, James. You know what I've done here? Because I do that for recycling. So I don't plan. I just have a bunch of stuff and I'm recycling.
Right. Right.
I do that with blue cheese and goat and whatever is left over. That's not a hard cheese. But if I have a hard cheese, I'm going to put everything in the blender and make a cheese ball.
Yeah. And to that, you would add a little alcohol and a little acid, right? Some wine, maybe some lemon.
Cognac works. Gin works. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Actually, you can do a lot of things in there.
I didn't think of using gin. That's a great idea.
Gin, because it's a botanical.
Uh-huh.
So you get a lot of flavors. The juniper and whatever is in the gin. That's going to be really good.
Oh, very nice.
Cool, huh? I've done cheese marinated cheese, little goat cheese. I put vodka. I put gin. Gin and walnut oil, some gin, and you have those flavors. And you can put some freshly herbed like thyme or oregano or whatever. That whole thing smells really good. It's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. You could use this. You could use this also. You could take a pork tenderloin and kind of cut it and butterfly it out, and you could spread that mixture in there and roll it back up and tie it and roast it in the oven, and it would be delicious. And then just slice it.
Oh yeah, the goat cheese, the chicken, for example. That's.
I would maybe add a little cooked spinach to it or something, which would be nice too.
To keep it together, because the cheese might just ooze out.
Right.
So a lot of times the cheese is mixed with something, so it holds better. And sometimes they put breadcrumb, which I don't really use a lot, but it's a way to keep that cheese in there. When you do your chicken with goat cheese, oven, 7 minutes done, beautiful stuff.
Very nice. So yeah, all these fresh cheeses are great for summertime. I particularly like feta because it's so versatile, but I use a lot of goat cheese too. Goat cheese is also good in eggs.
Feta, because people are used to do that with salads. but any
Right.
cheese goes with salads, and cheese will bring you your protein and your and your good fat and B12
That's
and
right.
all of these.
If you can find a feta from Greece, I highly recommend it because I know how it's made and I know how the animals are raised, and it's terrific stuff. Now, back in 2002, the Greeks won a court case with the European Union to
Crazy.
put a patent on the name. It was kind of too late. The horse was already out of the barn. There's so many people that use the name. They make a ton of feta in France.
Yep.
They make a lot of feta in Bulgaria. Actually,
Israel.
Bulgarian feta is very good.
Israeli feta is really good too.
In Israeli, they make a lot of feta.
Oh, yeah.
The word itself is Greek. It basically means slice. And that's because that's how it's made. After they continually cut up the curds and they pack them and they salt them.
Can you talk about how it's made? Actually, can you, because it's a cured cheese. This is different from all the other cheese. Can you just go through that? Well, I think people don't even have any idea.
Yeah, it starts off like any fresh cheese. A starter culture of bacteria is added to the milk and some sort of rennet to start the coagulation process. So, in other words, what you're doing is you're getting the curds to start coagulating and separating from the whey, which is the liquid. The curds are the solid, the whey is the liquid. Then you let that do its thing for a little while, and when the curds have started to solidify, then what you want to do is you want to cut them, and they use these big, it looks like a big stainless steel tennis racket, and they drag it through the curds, and it just cuts it up into little cubes, and then they just keep fluffing that and then you drain most of the whey off, which you can do other things with. You can make ricotta, you can feed it to the animals, which is what they often do.
You can make protein powder, can you?
Yeah, they take the whey often and they dry it and they make it into a powder. In small artisanal operations, it usually gets fed to some kind of animal, usually pig. Pigs love it. They just eat it up.
Superfood. Also.
Yeah. And then they put it into little molds and they salt it and they keep turning it. And when it's set up enough that it can stand on its own, then it's finished in a brine. They cure it in a brine solution, and that gives it its distinctive saltiness. It helps set up the cheese. It never forms a rind. It's a young cheese, and so it never gets a rind.
So it brines. So brine means it's a salted water. What do they put in there? Anything special or spices or?
I think pretty much it's just salt water. It's sea salt and really fresh, good water.
Just like
now in the old days,
just like you brine a turkey.
Exactly.
So
now in the old days, they would stack feta up in barrels. They would take these wooden barrels, like wine barrels, and they would stack the feta up in there, and then they would pour the brine solution over there, and then they would let that cure for several days, and that's it. And it would get shipped that way too.
Wow.
I wanted to point out one other thing too. And so feta is naturally crumbly. Because of the way it's cured, it's not like fresh goat cheese, which is very creamy and spreadable. Feta is more crumbly. And it doesn't melt the same as some cheeses, which is nice because if you're doing certain things with it, it doesn't just get oozy and stringy. It stays kind of the way it is. But what you were talking earlier about salting the cheese to preserve it and to store it, you can also take the salt out of cheese that way. So sometimes if a piece of feta is too salty for your taste, or because you've stored it that way and it's just got a lot of salt on it, all you do is you put it in a bowl of fresh water and soak it for about 10 minutes and then take that cheese out. And it's not going to take out the flavor, but it's going to pull out a lot of the salt. So depending on what you're doing with cheese, you might want it to be not quite as salty. Yeah, feta is a great cheese to have around. I like to have it in my refrigerator all the time.
Well,
I tend to buy Greek feta.
I buy
Yeah.
French feta, but that's
French
I
feta
buy
is very good too.
because it's always cheap. I mean, the one I buy is always cheap. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
You know, I
There's
need a sheep feta. I don't want to do cow. Cow doesn't taste as good. It's just it's heavy. It's different.
Yeah, I like cow's milk for other kinds of cheeses.
Yes.
Israeli feta is really good too. There's a brand called Taste of Eden, I think it is, that is a fabulous feta, and that is mostly sheep and goat. But it's harder to find. You're not going to find it everywhere. I think the French feta is probably the easiest one to find, and then the Greek, and then the Israeli. But they're all really good.
Yeah.
The Greeks actually eat more cheese per capita than either the French or the Italians. Did you know that?
Nope.
They eat a lot of cheese, and that's mostly feta. They eat it on everything.
Oh yeah, I mean it's food. It's a really good food.
Yeah, there's a close cousin to feta called halloumi.
Right. Yeah.
Halloumi's a really good cheese too. It's denser. It's a harder, denser textured cheese because when they make it, they need the curds. They need them more, almost like you're making bread. So it really toughens up those fibers and it makes for a denser cheese, which it's really good for frying. They do that a lot too. They fry it.
Right. So
nice.
The thing is, in Europe, but in Greece specifically, when you eat cheese, they eat cheese because it's actually food.
Right.
What I'm saying is, it's a meal. Here,
Right.
it's more like a appetizer, fun. No, this is food. This is food. You don't have to eat that all day long and every day. But this is food. This is has all the macronutrient in there, all your nutrients, everything you need. So yes, it is food. It is also food.
That being said, I think cheese is also a really good snack. If it's the middle of the afternoon and you're really hungry and you really need something, cheese is the perfect snack because it's not gonna weigh you down too much. It's not a whole bunch of carbohydrates. It's not just empty.
Well, it depends how much bread you eat with that.
Well, but I mean, you just eat a little piece of cheese. It kind of takes the edge off my hunger, but it's better than opening a bag of potato chips or eating
don't do the cheap thing.
Whatever it is people snack on. They eat cookies and chips and
we need to
have a piece of cheese instead.
Cool.
But yeah, cheese makes a great meal. What you made there today, spread on some good crusty bread with a little green salad, maybe some olives, maybe some cornichon pickles,
and a little piece of cold chicken or just a big salad with vegetables. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's a perfect summer meal.
Oh yeah.
Light, refreshing, really good for you. So there's been a lot of controversy. Been a lot of controversy about the name protection for feta because all these other countries who have been making it for years said, what do we call it now? So it's gone back and forth in the courts. And of course, here in America, we do whatever we want. We don't pay any attention to international laws. So we call it feta. And there is some very good feta made in this country, particularly in Wisconsin.
I don't know. There's some good cheese here.
But it's not bad cheese. It's just I agree with you. I think the sheep and the goat feta is much better. It's a much more traditional flavor.
James, we have another minute.
Okay.
So can you say something really fast for 1 minute?
Yes. Once again, and we talked about this last week, and we've been talking about it for a while, but supporting these cheesemakers is very important because it's such a system that goes back. I mean, it's the animals and the farmers and in some cases the farmers and the cheesemakers are the same, but we need to keep these people going because there's a real danger of some of these foods dying away, and it's such a constant struggle anyway.
And that's going to be
even
forever.
In the best of times.
If they go, they go. You can't just reopen a farm like this.
Exactly.
So you have to really, really pay attention to what's
And even in the best of times, even in the best of times, there are big corporations that are trying to move in and take over some of these smaller operations. So we want to protect them. And right now, it's even more crucial because half their distribution channel has been destroyed or shut down temporarily. So some of them will survive, some of them will come back, some of them are going to have a very hard time. And the more that they can sell retail, the better. And
James,
then, of course, in restaurants as well. Anyway, that's all the time we have today.
So
thank you to Amanda for
we'll have a new
it was great.
Thank you, Amanda. Great. Thank you. We'll have a new guest next week, which we haven't received the answer yet.
Yes, I think it's going to be
Edmund.
It's going to be George Clooney's going to join us live from Italy. Yeah, he's going to talk about Italian food.